Today, we are going to make some grass. No, I'm not in Colorado, so it's not going to be that kind of grass. It's our techniques that are so simple and sensible, your mowers will practically build themselves. Hello folks, it's Mad Dog Merv. Well, some really strange things going on in the world right now. And I know you're sick and tired of hearing about them. So am I. But I'll tell you what, I've been right on the front line of all this stuff. And I wanted to share with you a couple of things because it's very relevant to the model building and to the history and the schools and all the stuff that we do here on the channel. So I did want to kind of give you folks a little bit of an update because there's a couple of things that have happened. Not just this whole coronavirus thing, and the fact that I work for a school district and I work in a maintenance custodial department and I'm a supervisor. So the word essential personnel, you know, firemen, truck drivers, policemen, people that work in the food industry, and custodians. I mean, we're all essential frontline personnel. So it's been really crazy for me personally. And then on top of that, here in Utah, well, in Salt Lake City, we had an earthquake. And I felt some little earthquakes before, but nothing nearly what this one was. This one really got my attention. And I'll be honest with you, it pushed me to my limit mentally. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in this particular segment. I wanted to share with you some of the damage and non-damage and some of the great things that are happening here in the doghouse, and just kind of update you on how things are with the, COVID-19 thing as it relates to Mad Dog Merv and all of the cool stuff we do. So stick with us, and well, let's get caught up on what's going on our channel in relationship to the craziness of the current situation. Well, here is how my week started out. So I had been replacing some track in this particular curve. I had a re-railer that was on the main line and it was causing some issues. So I had put down a straight piece in its place, and I had put this gallon of paint that I have there to kind of push it down. Well, that leaked out overnight and caused an incredible mess, as you can see. And this is the paint that I use as my base coat for everything, so I really needed to try and get as much of it back as I could. So I assessed the damage, and I started to take a brush and just kind of scoop it up and put it back into a separate container that I can use. And it took me about an hour or an hour and a half to do this process completely, to get everything cleaned up. But as you can see here, a couple hours later, everything was good. We had that all cleaned up. The track was cleaned up. I had done a little bit of the dirt and whatnot around this track, including some of the ballast, and everything was fine. And the track was running great at this point. So, there's one disaster, but didn't lose my mind, just got into it, and it turned out just fine. And as you notice on my layout, that I use a lot of red sand. And this is the Snow Canyon area of southern Utah. And I had a friend recently go down there hiking, and I said, hey, I'm almost out of sand. My Moab sand's about done. Could you pick me up some from southern Utah? So from this area right here where these pictures were taken, my friend grabbed me a bag of red sand. And so here it is next to my sand from Moab. And you can see it's a little bit different color. I do need to get it dried out completely, and then we're going to be using that as well on the layout. Again, I mixed that with my road grit that I have a video out from last year of how I got some road grit, and I mixed this together, and I call it my Utah dirt. It's kind of my own little unique blend of color. So that was something pretty good that happened this week. But then come Wednesday morning, well, the earth started to shake. And I was very angry because I wasn't ready for the big one. I was getting my shoes on at the time, and it did cause some damage in parts of Salt Lake City. I did have a couple of things fall off the shelf in the house and break, but I got to work and we got our buildings assessed and everything was good. They sent us home early, which was great. And I was afraid that out in the doghouse, well, it was going to be a disaster. So here I'm walking to the doghouse thinking everything on all of my shelves is going to be on the floor. I wasn't too worried about breakage, maybe a few things, maybe some glass, whatever. I thought everything that was going to be above was going to be on the floor and it was going to be a huge mess. So I was a little stressed about it. Well, I get out there and I open up the door and here's what I find. First of all, the power was out and it looks like my heater had tipped over because it was on a garbage can. I have movies strewn about, my emergency stash of toilet paper, which, yes, I do have, folks, and I defend that with my life. But, yes, that had come down off of where it was at. And you see that a few of my spray cans of different cleaners, my drill had fallen from its perch. But, man, not everything was down. In fact, here, kind of by my work area, it's all videos. And I did have one model, and I had one of my little buildings that was up on a shelf that had fallen, but I was shocked. There was a lot of things that could have come down. I'll show you in a minute what all could have come down and what didn't come down. With this earthquake, I was absolutely shocked that there wasn't more damage in the shed. You can see a couple of things that were right here by the layout. There's some more videos from one of my little shelves that had come down and landed on my glass tabletop, and it wasn't damaged. It wasn't broken at all, and I was very grateful. So I look at this damage. I went, good, we'll flip the breaker back on. We'll get power back on, and this isn't going to take too long to get cleaned up. Well, so there was a little bit of cleanup. Obviously, there were some things that had fallen on this segment here, and I had to reset some headstones. Some of the headstones were down. I did run a vacuum over this and cleaned up some of the little smaller debris. You can see that there's quite a bit of foliage that I had off of different trees and off of different things. So I put it aside here because I'm going to be repurposing it on other parts of the layout. So part of my therapy, because as I said, I've reached my limit, and I reacted in such a way that this is where I came. This is my solitude. This is my solace. This is my, how can I put it? Well, this is my sanctuary. So I came out here, and as I'm watching the news on my computer, so that I can kind of keep up to date with everything, between that and answering phone calls and texts and blah, 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 I actually finished this little piece right here. I built this little road piece, and if you'll remember on my layout, we just used to have the road go there, and there was a mirror there. I decided I was going to have the road now come across to this area. There's nothing right now because it's where I work. But imaginary will be coming over here to this point, so we can cross over to the motel, and imaginary over here and connect to this part of the road. So I got that taken care of. There was a little disaster over the weekend. I'll share those pictures with you on what happened here, and you can see how this has turned out. And I have put down new road bed and got my tracks cleaned, and everything is up and running now. And all of this I have done in this last week. When we wonder why I was so concerned, first of all, this is right above this part of my bench where I sit. It's a good thing I'm not in here when there's a real big earthquake, because you can see I have a lot of kits and things up here. This is a good portion of my stash, not a good portion, it's part of my stash. And then there's this area here where I have a bunch of my railroad stuff and some of my extra parts. And this tank up here, well, it was on the floor. Can you imagine it fell all the way from there? It came all the way down to here. And the only thing that broke off of that tank was the .50 caliber machine gun. And it didn't it just broke on the mount. I was able to put it right back on. But some of these items here came down onto the layout. I was very fortunate that none of this came down. I thought that was going to come down and be on the layout, but it wasn't. And none of my roofing material, none of my ceiling, none of this came down. So I was very, very happy. So one other thing we're going to cover here, as we look out the window, I have this little stash up here of videos. This is where I keep a lot of my, I call them my ready grab videos. These are the ones I watch the most, and they're very easy to grab. And believe it or not, there was only one section of all of this. This section right here is the only one that came down on my desk. Now, as I pan over, I do have these videos up here, which are part of the collection. Now, unfortunately, every one of these had come out, and every one of these were on the floor, and that's why it looks so messy and disheveled out here. But I was so fortunate because I have so much other stuff that is packed into my doghouse out here that is storage for the home, and none of this came down. Because as you can see, well, I have part of a layout here that could have been completely destroyed. In fact, the only thing that really fell over here is I've got a gas can. I don't know if you can see it down there, but I've got a gas can down there that fell, and I need to get that picked back up because some of the gas sloshed out, and I've got this wonderful gas smell here in the doghouse. But other than that, things are good.
There you have it. We had a flood on the layout. We had an earthquake. And then this whole thing with the COVID-19. And keep in mind, I'm in a high-risk class, so I need to be self-isolated. I really should be. But my career is one that we are deemed essential personnel, even in states that have already gone to I call it the 14-day lockdown, but the shelter-in-place order. I'm deemed essential personnel. So the way I look at it, though, I'm honored to be able to serve and to help in a crisis like this, even though I am in a high risk area. So, but the important thing about this whole thing, because you've heard enough of COVID-19 and all this other crap, the important thing to remember is we have our hobby and the importance of our hobby. A lot of people will discount, not another model. Well, you know what? This is how we cope. And I'll tell you, the day of that earthquake, it was pretty stressful. The aftershock that hit at about 1 o'clock that day, really, I found out who I was, and I found out that I wasn't as strong as I thought. I had some real, I don't know, anxiety, damage, whatever you want to call it, from that aftershock. And all I could do was come out here and turn on the computer that I have and watch the news and model, because I couldn't really do anything else. I had to come to this sanctuary, and that's exactly what this is. And you saw some of the things that I was able to do out here. So the big takeaway, while you're in quarantine or while times are so crazy, try to turn as much as you can to those things that make you happy. Look at the positives. This has created some great opportunity for me to hunker down and do some research that I've been needing to do, but I just haven't had the time. Do some modeling that I really wanted to get done, but I just haven't had the time. You know, it is a little inconvenient because in 2 weeks I was supposed to go to a conference in southern Utah, and there's a couple of junkyards that I still need to check out for my part 2 of the Junkyards of Utah. And I was planning on hitting those in 2 weeks, and well, now that's been canceled. So not sure when I'll get over there, and not sure when I'll get that done. But you know, for me, it's also a good time to maybe hit a ghost town or something. I mean, there's nobody around, so you know, not a bad time to do something like that. So I look at it as there's some opportunities and there's some positives in this whole thing. So be kind to each other, get some modeling done, and try to come through this as positive as possible. And we will see you here in another week with some more zaniness that we do here on this channel. So thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you then.